Speaking moistly, keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another weekday edition of Speaking Moistly with me, as usual, on a Tuesday. Greg, how are you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic, Mark. Thank you for having me.
I always enjoy our conversations. And so today's they just made the announcement. You were just looking in the green room. We were kind of hanging out, and you were looking at the breakdown of the votes. They've repealed one of the most, is it controversial? They haven't repealed it. They suspended it. They didn't repeal it. But the vax mandates for travel, and the bureaucrats are allowed to go back to work. So benevolent is our government, right? Thank you, government. Oh, what do you think? What was it? 115 to 174 or no one?
I was looking at the votes for C11 actually. Bill
Okay.
C11, which is
That's different. And
that really irritates me. But yeah, I mean it's the like I feel what's so frustrating is like this is disconnected from like the decision is always like arbitrary, like the decision to introduce the mandates was always like, was this justified? And now I'd like to repeal it. It also seems like that they're doing it arbitrarily, as if people haven't been complaining about this since the beginning. Like they purposely make it seem like it was, we checked, we did the research and we talked to the people and now we're deciding this, and it's
the science changed.
It just seems such a charade.
It is. Well, and I mean, like, how could you? Well, the whole thing is a charade, and like, people didn't want travel restrictions. They didn't want vax mandates. I don't think generally the Canadian, they wanted to be safe, but we could have achieved the same thing by ending the fear mongering that's been like on radio and television since this whole thing began. It's been a massive ad campaign, really. Like, I don't know anybody personally who went to the hospital and had died because of COVID. Like, I don't know anybody, not one. I also don't know anybody who's had in person to person who's had an adverse reaction to the vaccine. So, but all of that said, I don't think it's right that the government's done what it's done. And here we are on the other side of it almost, because I don't think we are completely done. There's still kind of a lingering hangover, right? And the justification seems weak. Just like you saying that the justification for repealing it is weak, like the justification for any of this was weak in the first place, so I don't know. Are you excited about the return of our rights from the benevolent government?
I mean, I am, but it's one of those things where this almost just seems like a PR calculation, where it's like, we're doing this so we can appear to be somewhat reasonable, or like, because like when you talk to a normie about this, like before this decision to repeal it has been made, they'll say, well, what do you mean the mandates are gone? And I have to explain to them, like, no, they're not. Because you've been jabbed, so you think everything is fine when it's not fine. And millions of people have lost their jobs. Some people can't go to university anymore. Like there's a lot more than meets the eye to this whole issue.
And that's what I mean by like the hangover. You know what I mean? Like there's all these places that said, we also have to get in on this regulation party that's happening. Rights, you don't have right. I wonder why we didn't have a regulation about this before, right? And your rights, right? We got to make this regulation while the regulation making's hot. So everybody got on regulation making, right? And now the government's like, oh yeah, forget about that. It's cool. We learned some sciencey science, and the science now says new science.
Yeah, and it's it's of course it's not over, right? Like the precedent that's been set with over the past 2 years. Now they know that what they can get away with in terms of restrictions, in terms of fear mongering through propaganda. And it's just in time for the summer holiday, just in time for the summertime. Yep. And we've made the jokes in the past of like, oh yeah, they're going to let us out for recess during the summer. And then, lockdowns come back with flu season.
We talked about this last year. Yeah, we did. We talked about this last year. Yeah. Because they were talking about repealing the masks and letting people indoors. I mean, like the insanity, we extended patio season to November. Like this is insane. We are a country that experiences winter. You know, like
Yeah.
the lengths we went to appease these insane people who said you might get somebody sick with a cold, you might overwhelm our system. You know, if our system's going to be overwhelmed by this cold, even if it's a real bad cold, we should probably have a situation where the people who were supposed to be administering and taking care of our hospitals and healthcare are held accountable for not doing that for what, 20 years, 25 years. We shouldn't be like, oh, you know what we need to do? You citizen need to be locked down. No, 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 no. We need to find the politician who's responsible for healthcare. Christine Elliott, come on my show. Let's all have a conversation about why lockdown was preferable to actually building a healthcare system that effing well works.
Yeah.
I doubt she'll come on though.
Pretty basic stuff. Pretty basic stuff. And that's the thing, like, you know, conversation and debate just like simply is not had anymore. You know, like the gun control, for example. All it takes is somebody to look at the gun control issue and like what Trudeau's presented to be like, so you're punishing lawful gun owners. Like, how is that going to stop, you know, illegal firearms and the death? You know, like it's all it takes is, you know, the most common sense question. And it's like, so wait, why didn't this debate happen? Why didn't this conversation happen? And it's like, you know, people always love to say, well, there's still a democracy. We're still in a democracy. And it's like, well, you're supposed to have debates in democracy. You're supposed to have like, you know, a reasonable kind of combating of ideas to make informed decisions. And I'm sorry, like, as far as I can tell, that hasn't happened for 2 years plus. And it's like, it's just very frustrating. And as I've kind of been venting and ranting on for the past few weeks on Speaking Moistly, I'm really tired of this, like people still giving the Canadian establishment the benefit of the doubt of like, oh, well, maybe they did just come to a decision and you know, they're doing their best. And it's like, no, it really seems like they are trying to, quite frankly, like, you know, kill as many people as possible and make it look like it's totally natural. Like, hey, no, this is health and safety. And I feel like this decision of repealing the travel restrictions is to be like, see, look, we're being reasonable. See, look, we're totally being reasonable.
I want to speak to they're trying to kill as many people as possible. My question is, the Pfizer documents that were ordered to be released by the court, that's a real thing, right? I didn't make that up. That's a thing. The Pfizer people were trying to hide those documents for 75 years. So 75, I'm 40 years old. 75 plus 40 is, just quick, help me out there.
Yeah, you'd be dead.
110, right? So buddy, I got a lot of fight in me, but I'm like, oh man. So that's a little bit more than I've got in me. Probably 75 years. That's a long time, right? So, but those documents, I didn't make them up. That's not a fever dream, right? Like I wasn't sitting around one day and I thought to myself, okay, so that's a real, why doesn't Health Canada, like, why is that ignored? Like, why is there a lid on that data? Because I asked the local public health people, I was like, hey, like, is there going to be instruction on this? Because what I read on the internet, and I don't want to just follow everything I read on the internet because I hear that's dangerous or something like that, because the insane people in our government keep telling us this. So
it's misinformation, it's disinformation, it's reinformation, it's reconstrued information. You know, Canadian public, you guys are just too dumb to consume information for yourself.
But I emailed public health and I said, where's the instruction on this? Can you please like give me instruction on what to think about what it's saying? Because what it's saying is pretty horrific about pregnant people and like pregnant women, to make sure that I'm very clear about what I mean by that. And the data says some scary stuff. So can you ask me about that? And they laughed at me. They dismissed me and laughed at me. And I was like, isn't that interesting?
Via email?
Yeah. Oh, I've got that one.
Well, give me a teaser. Like, what did the email say?
Lol,
asking about the Pfizer studies. LOL.
They say, we think that it's a bit beyond the scope of our public health. Like we're not monitoring U.S. court outcomes. We think that's a little bit crazy. We follow the direction of Public Health Canada. I said, okay, so who, like they said, we follow the direction of Public Health Canada, NACI, blah, blah, blah. So like, that's a little beyond our scope, Mark. And I was like, but it shouldn't be. If these people aren't, right, if this is real data, that you should be contending with that real data, right? Like it shouldn't be, and you shouldn't be laughing at your citizens about that. I could find
it's all business. That's the thing. You know, I'll talk to normies. He's like, oh, conspiracy. And it's like, dude, it's literally business. It's literally to maximize sales of a pharmaceutical product. Like that's
Yeah,
it.
well, right. Yeah.
Like it's
So,
not yeah, certain people, it the same way that Nike conspires to make as much money as possible, these people are conspiring to make
well,
as
I mean,
much,
that's, I don't know
sell as
that
many
that's
pharmaceutical products as
conspiring.
possible.
That's like your job,
Oh,
right? If you work for Nike, you're like, you're not conspiring with your employer. You're like, I work for
right,
you and let's make money together. Yay.
but this is the thing about the actual term, like conspire, right? Like it's, if you actually look at the term, like you can like if you're building a
Yeah.
house, you're going to
Yeah.
conspire with
Right.
a,
The
a
drywallers and the
architect. Yeah,
tilers.
like it's going to
Yep.
be this whole, so that's why the whole thing is silly, it's very silly.
Yeah.
It's
So,
kind of I kind of want to jump into that. I would love to kind of exist in that world though again. Can you imagine? It's like, oh,
which world?
the world where billionaires aren't conspiring to make your life miserable like that.
Oh,
No,
like
no.
get out of the matrix, you mean? Like,
Yeah, like to be
or
back
be
in the
reinserted
Matrix.
back in the matrix and believe
Yeah,
that
just
everything's just
to like
like
it's
kittens
literally
and
like a story.
rainbows.
It's like a storybook. And the only thing evil in the world was the old white Republican man because he was racist, and that's the only thing wrong with the world.
See, the thing is, we had such edgy comedians in the early 2000s. Like edgy's not even really the right word for it, because they were kind of watered down then too. But like, you had Dave Chappelle, you had some comedians that would really engage with some stuff that now would be canceled, right?
Well, it's almost like I think of it as the flow changing direction. Like
Yeah.
a comedian's job is to be a social critic and is to challenge the status quo. And that kind of continued to happen. And like, what the status quo was up until like the late 90s, the 2000s was kind of still, the perceived kind of Christian right, like that was kind
Mhm.
of like the status quo that they were challenging of like, straight marriage and
Right. So like
whatever.
counterculture was against that
Yeah.
status quo, the Leave It to Beaver status quo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of natural for that to happen, to like, kind of go against the status quo. But like the new prevailing status quo, what's frustrating about it is that it's like, well, you can't challenge the status quo. Like this is the new status quo, and it's not something that you're allowed to critique anymore. It's not something that you're allowed to be a social critic of anymore. And we've kind of gone off the rails in this new direction where it's like, well, you just can't question things anymore. And
You can't question it. You can't question if somebody says
it's the PC. It's like it's the political correctness, like authoritarianism.
So
it's
we're going to get into Lightyear now, because and I mean, we have to talk about C11, but you're talking about this, you're talking about pushing things that people don't want and not letting them talk about it. And like Disney has they've talked about inserting this gay agenda. We wanted to talk about LGBTQ and stuff, right? And Lightyear's coming out. They've got the same-sex kiss. It's not allowed in certain countries. China, I think, is one of them. Saudi Arabia is another one of them.
What is Lightyear?
The Disney film Buzz Lightyear. It's a Lightyear.
There's a same-sex kiss in it.
There's a same-sex kiss in it. I think it's female. I think it's a female same-sex kiss.
Perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
So Disney's openly advocating for this ideology, right? Disney's openly pushing this, and people don't want it. But if you don't want it and you build something counter to that, like Daily Wire's building something, Daily Wire's building like a competitor to Disney that takes out all the woke crap, like, and just makes entertaining shows for kids rather than like the woke concepts.
Oh, really?
So they're trying to do that, but people are, and like, so they're investing in that as an arm of their company. So good for them. I think it's a good move. But like, if you wanted to put together, say, a daily news program or something like that, just throw it up on YouTube, and you didn't, whatever you did, you get canceled. I'll tell you. Right. So that's what I'm saying. If you put something up that's counter to the culture that they're trying to push, one, they've got money and big players like Disney backing this new push, and two, they've got government and other people saying, you promoting conservative traditional values is hateful to LGBT communities, and therefore you're hateful, and therefore you're canceled. And I think that that's crazy. Like, that's where we're at, I think.
Yeah. And it's I mean, maybe I was like, maybe I'm naive to this, but it really feels like culture was not so politicized in like the 90s and like the early 2000s. Like I feel like something happened between the early 2000s and like the Trump era,
Some,
where
I wonder what it could be.
something happened
Yeah.
where all of a
It was
sudden,
definitely not the iPhone.
well, that was certainly part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, something weird happened where, culture had to be like reined in, so to speak, and it had to be, well, you know what, this is good, and like the new religion, the new woke religion started essentially, where it's like, okay,
Some people,
patriarchy and
yeah,
critical race theory, all this stuff.
some people tie that back to Glee. Did you watch that show, Glee?
No way. There's a theory that this all comes
There's,
from Glee.
I read a theory.
Tell me.
It was
Tell
on
me
Senate.
about it. Let's go.
And no, basically, like if you watched Glee at all, like you know that they talked about microaggressions and like it was nonsense. It was like a teeny bopper, like bubblegum pop show
Yeah.
that had kids singing like headline songs, right? And everybody was like,
Mhm.
watching this Glee show. But like, yeah, basically the whole theory is that Glee started the woke cultural revolution, and like on purpose or accidentally, I don't know. But so that was like 2009 to, was it 2012, I guess, when it went off. I don't know. I can't remember. Like I watched the first season and then I was like, I'm not playing this game anymore. Like, nope.
Yeah, I mean,
Done.
it's a pretty fascinating topic because, it really is about this moral authority which so many people have bought into.
Yes.
And
How-
it's become like an immoral imperative for people where, automatically, even if it's a conservative person, they will sometimes say, well, let them live their life and
Yep.
let them, let that be what it is. And it's very I don't know, it's very peculiar. It's very insidious the way that it's kind of like slowly crept in to our psyches. And
Yeah.
and I think you're right. Like, the LGBTQ agenda was real, guys. There was an agenda this whole time.
Well, I mean, I remember laughing at it. I remember hearing about it very articulated very clearly. I was like, this guy's nuts. He's so crazy. Because I like it. I like conspiracy theories. Like I like conspiracy theories. But it's interesting. I was going to make a point and I can't remember where I was going to go with it. Darn it. I'm going to interrupt next time because you were talking. What were you talking about? Go ahead.
I was talking about
yeah, I hate when that happens. Well, we were talking about LGBT2 and all of that other stuff. Oh, I was going to ask these questions. Okay. So basically the question I have, so the Waterloo Regional District School Board had a teacher saying, thank you, Waterloo Regional District School Board, for bringing in this drag queen to talk about math, because you can like drag queens, or you can be a drag queen and like math. And I was like,
finally.
Well, I was making the comparison on my show. If I had Candy, the stripper, come to the school and do an oil change, that would probably be my most attended class, but it would be not appropriate because of the adult nature of the entertainment. Why is a drag queen not adult nature? Like, or why is a drag queen not seen by a school board as sexual adult entertainment? Because that's exactly what it is. And these guys are coming in dressed up as women. I've seen pictures of people's flashing kids in New York. They spent $200,000 of education money to bring drag queens in. And I saw this Waterloo Regional School Board tweet talking about this drag queen and this teacher, and they exposed this drag queen to people talking about math. But if you're exposing children to adult sexual entertainment, that's against the law, isn't it? That's grooming, isn't it? And so like, I have a problem with that. But how did we go from,
how did we get here?
Well, right. But like, I personally, as an adult, I don't have a problem what you do. Like, I'm not going to not be your friend for somebody for your sexual preference or anything like that. I don't care what you do, so long as you don't hurt other people, right? Like, with what you do in your bedroom is fine, so long as everybody's consensual and, of age, and you're not hurting anybody. That's, I don't have a problem with it. But how did we get from a point to, if you have, privacy in your bedroom to love who you want, to bring men dressed up as women in drag to advocate for trans rights in schools? I don't understand. Like, even like drag queen story hour or whatever, I don't understand how we got to that point. Like, and how people weren't having a really big pushback against it. I don't get
it. And I think I can partially answer that. I think the main reason is there's this sort of rose-colored glasses that is applied to everything woke, and it's, again, it's very childlike, it's very storybook like, but
Mhm.
a lot of this narrative of like the LGBTQ plus and like love is love and blah blah blah, it's actually so um immature and storybook
Mhm.
like that it actually presents this idea that gay people are beyond reproach. Like there's like nothing, like they're like dysfunctional gay people just don't exist. Like
Yeah.
there isn't any sexually perverted and totally demented gay people out there
Yeah.
ever.
Not one. Not
Every
one.
every
Yep.
LGBTQ plus, everyone in the community is a perfect, loving, amazing person. And
Yep.
none of them are addicted to meth. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
none of them have ever
They
done
dress
hard
well. They
drugs.
can cook.
None of
They like
them don't
wine.
go to raves and like, just party and are like totally unhinged. No, no, no.
Yeah.
They're all totally, completely well-adjusted people.
Yeah.
All of them are.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, of
Unquestionable.
course, it's totally insane because it's like it's actually gotten to the point of, orange man bad, straight person bad, gay person good. What could be bad about gay person?
You know why? I know
Trans
the answer to
person
this one.
amazing. Obviously we should have gay person reading book to children, duh, because they're gay and they're like amazing and nothing's wrong with them. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Good role
so
model. The reason for it is because they're telling these kids, they're using critical race theory and gender theory as a carrot and stick. So like they say you're terrible because of colonialism, and your skin color, the people who have the same skin color as you are guilty by no court, by the public right now, or they're guilty of all of these horrific crimes against humanity. And that's the belief. And so you, by extension, because you have that same skin color, guilty of the same crimes. And these other people who don't have that skin color, they're amazing people. Just like you said, it's something that's unquestionable. You can't even bring up like maybe they're not. Like maybe each individual is an individual and it doesn't have anything to do with skin color. That's no, right?
mhm.
And they're offering the gender ideology as a way to kind of wash yourself of that colonial, like that skin color thing. And now you get to be reborn as, a sparkle princess drag queen, and you get to have a brand new gender ideology or gender identity. And now you're free, right? Now you don't have to deal with that oppressor BS because you've got,
Mhm.
cross-sex hormones to deal with or something.
Yeah, instead of being baptized, you just go on HRT,
Yeah, and I think that there's something like there's a similarity between the two things.
for
Like,
sure, for
yep.
sure. Because it's not about, people say, oh, it's about educating, we're just educating them. It's like, actually, on the contrary, you're presenting a moral framework, a moral
Yes. Yep.
framework. You're
Yep.
not contextualizing LGBTQ plus or black and white as a sort of, hey, this is how the world works. There's different sexualities, there's different relationships. You're teaching children this sort of like intense moral framework of like, this is good, that's
Yep.
bad, this is an oppressor, this is a non-oppressor, and it's very moral. And because of
Yep.
that, it certainly has a strong spiritual element. And I think that, I think humans are, whether you like it or not, I think humans are predisposed to the, spiritual
Mhm.
ways of thinking about their
Yep.
existence.
Yep.
And especially when it's moral. So, all these kids are going to be thinking of, okay, like I need to repent and I need to become a fairy person. I need to become a fair, and I need to start identifying as this to be a good person
Yep.
I am white. I am a sinner. I need to repent and become a,
Yep.
a
Yep.
confessed oppressor, because we're all sinners. Anyway, there's a lot of
Yep. Yeah,
parallels there.
there are. Yep. There are.
But
And
that's creepy because, people say, oh, it's indoctrination, and it's like, it's almost even deeper than that. Because it is the moral, like we're teaching kids this moral framework of how to look at the world.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're going to have a lot of religious zealots, woke zealots.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and
and
I mean,
along,
I didn't.
along with that, we're going to have a lot of like, kids who grow up with this sort of shame for being white, right? Or for being whatever.
Yeah.
And it's going to
Yeah.
be interesting how the rebellion to that happens, because that always happens, right?
Yeah, there's going to be
always,
a pushback. I'm
there's always a
interested
pushback.
because I was raised in the same era I think that you were raised in, the era of like Martin Luther King. I have a dream, I dream that like our kids are judged by the content of their character rather than like how they look to the world, how the color of their skin. And so that was the belief that I had, and most of my friends had, and people growing up in, see, like high school was mostly white where I grew up, but the other high school was not, and like, or was not as much, but still predominantly white, I think. And like that wasn't a really big thing that impacted us yet, but I hear like 5 or 6 years after I left, there was a big demographic change, but and people were just kind of like, it wasn't a thing that created tension. And they're really trying hard to create tension now, right? So yeah, it's a really, and the, like, one of the points I was saying before is like, I don't have a problem with what you do privately, like in your own bedroom, behind closed doors, blah blah blah. But the problem that I have is when you start targeting kids, like, and that's the whole thing. This whole ideology
Yeah.
targets it, almost hijacks kids' hardwired, like the people are hardwired to respond to religious style indoctrination, and this mirrors that. And so they're hijacking that little loophole for kids, and they're just mainlining it. And kids are responsive, man. And especially if, like, here's how you be good, here's how you be bad. Kids love that stuff. Well, the kids who like that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they'll play for
It's
they'll play
simplistic.
for Scooby snacks. It's very simple. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
why there's good guys and bad guys in kids' stories. And it's not gray. Like, you know, when you're reading about the bad guy, it's like the bad guy chapter. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's very simple. And that's the most effective.
Which is crazy, because it's like, hey, we're going to teach kids not to be racist by generalizing groups all the time. We're going to tell them to
By
generalize
being
groups.
super racist.
Every, like, okay, guys, not all black people are bad, but all white people are bad. Okay. This is how we're going to solve the problem.
Are all brown people bad? No.
Yeah. No, just
Timmy,
white
you
people
always do
bad.
this.
You got it. Yeah.
The
Stop
only
being
bad
racist,
people
idiot.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think you're absolutely right, because, you know, a lot of normies will be like, why do you care? Just let trans people be trans people. And it's like, you know what, to the most part, I agree with that. But, you know, the reason
That's
I joined,
that's not the problem. That's not the problem.
right. But I was just going to say, like, you know, the reason I joined politics was, you know, I saw how biased the media was becoming. But the reason I'm staying in politics is because I'm realizing that, like, no one is protecting children. Like, no one is out here. Like, it's terrifying. And
so did you see the Waterloo region? Sorry, not to derail your point, because
okay.
but the last time I forgot.
That was it.
That was it. Okay. Did you see the Waterloo Region District School Board putting the drag queen out there? How much do you think that school boards in Ontario are spending on drag queens? Is like a sentence I didn't think I would have to utter as an adult, right? Like, what's the line item cost on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's super in right now. It's super
freedom
in right
of
now.
information request. We should.
And I just made a TikTok about this that I was telling Mark just got taken down, unfortunately. But it speaks exactly to what we're talking about. And, you know, there was this young Black woman. She might have been a they, them, I don't know. But she was essentially saying, hey, you know, because my point was, if you're talking about LGBTQ youth and trans youth, you are projecting sexuality onto children.
Mhm.
Okay. And her counterpoint was, well, if you have a kid who comes home from school and it's like, hey, I have a crush. I'm a little boy and I have a crush on this girl. Are you going to jump to the conclusion that, you know, your kid is being sexual or wants to have sex? And, like, what's the difference between a boy coming home and saying they have a crush on a boy? And I explained to them, like, you know, we need to be very honest when it comes to having this conversation. Okay. So kids aren't stupid. So, like, they're going to grow up. No, if they have a mommy and daddy, they're going to have some understanding of sexuality intuitively, whether you like it or not. And, you know, doesn't make sense to, well, my point is like, you know, by introducing these ideas that there can be two dads or that a man can have sex with a man, you are, whether you like it or not, you are introducing these ideas. You're pushing these ideas into a children's mind, the possibility of that. You are broadening the sexual possibilities for a child. I think that's wrong, because I don't think a child should be worried about sex and sexuality because they are a child. Right? So it's like, why do we need to be expanding?
Oh.
So I don't think that expanding a child's mind with these sexual possibilities is a good thing, because I think it should be our job to protect the innocence of a child as much as possible, especially at younger ages. Because yes, we will intuitively learn more about sex and sexuality. I can agree with helping a kid know that they're not going to be a victim of abuse. And even when I grew up, there was a little small system that, that they introduced this with these ideas of that. And I totally agree with that. But the other thing this person said was talking about, your boy comes home and he has a crush on a girl. What's the difference between your boy coming home and having a crush on a boy? And the thing is like, if would I be worried about my kid having sex, was the question. My response was, it would depend on my perceived awareness of how much my child had been exposed to sexual content in general. Because there's a lot of sexual content out there, like more than ever, like especially with Nicki Minaj and her music video.
Well, just watch WAP.
It's very naive for parents to think that their children aren't being exposed to sexual material like that on a regular basis.
Well,
but here comes the rub, because they'll say, oh, well, so what? Straight people do it too. And what's the difference with, a gay person or a trans person? Here's the difference. If you are straight, there is a strong possibility that a huge part of your straight existence is to procreate and have a family. Okay. When you are not straight, only rarely, less often does that whole family thing really happen. And quite frankly, like, you are almost like committed to a life or an identity that is defined by sex, completely defined by sex. And this is a more controversial take, but yeah, like that's a hill I'm willing to die on, because it's if you look at RuPaul's Drag Race, if you look at like Lady Gaga stuff, and like, there's a lot of proud gay men, and I'm sorry to say, like, when you define yourself through your sexuality, it's kind of a douchey thing. It's like a frat bro in a frat house who's like, yeah, we're gonna go out, we're gonna get pussy tonight, and like, that's my whole identity. And it's like, that's really douchey. Thankfully, frat bros grow out of it.
Sometimes,
but in the gay world, they don't, they don't always grow out of it. Like that's kind of their whole.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on is like the kids who are being evangelized too, right? Having this pushed down their throats, like the drag kids, they're 8 or 9, like sometimes 10, maybe. You don't see kids who've gone through puberty, right? You don't see groups of 14-year-old boys doing a drag show together and like, yeah, we nailed that one, right? Like, and so like, I'm glad that I'm not seeing that, but that speaks to the fact that why are we allowing society to aim these ideas to kids who have not even begun reaching sexual maturity? They don't understand what it means to dress in a provocative outfit and shake whatever thing is out in the provocative outfit, right? If you're, whatever age these things are, these kids are, they don't get it. They don't understand why men would want other men to dress up as women and shake things. And then they're out there doing it for them. And I think that's crazy. And we as a society are tolerating this with, the drag kids TV shows and all this crap. And I mean, like, I don't watch that.
I'm just thinking of a potential answer to that question, because it's a really good question. And I think
the other thing I wanted to mention as well is like, I know some people, more than one person who's LGBT and they have a family. And I don't have a problem with people who love other people of the same sex. I don't have a problem with people who want to define themselves through their sexuality as long as they can, right? Like if you're a porn star, if you're Jenna Jameson or any of the, the porn stars who are popular and they're making money and they want to do that and they want to be a convention person and wear their sexuality, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't think the people who do that are bad. Like people who are living as a gay person in a family, or a gay, like a pair of people who are raising children and they're a family and they happen to be same sex, I don't have a problem with any of that. They can do that. It's like, I think you should be judged on your character and who you are, not on the other things about you. Now, if you're abusing kids, I have a problem with that. If you're using that as a vector to tell a kid something that's not true is true, I have a problem with that. But if you're honestly trying to raise a kid up and do that whole thing, do what you got to do. But that is gay or straight. You know, like there are straight people. Like I grew up knowing a lot about the foster system. I like my family was involved in that system through the 80s and 90s. And so I know a lot about that. That has nothing to do with gay or straight. That has to do with horrific circumstances, meeting people who make terrible, awful choices. And I don't think you're ever Darth Vader in your own story. So I don't think anybody's sitting there trying to hurt people, but sometimes people get hurt. And so like horrible. And sometimes people are evil. Sometimes people lose themselves in trying to get revenge against a kid or something like that. And bad things happen. I've seen it firsthand. I know. Right. And so the thing is, families are complicated, but I don't think they should be judged on their makeup of who's composing the family. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think people should be judged if they're encouraged. Our society, I was actually talking about this at lunch today. Our society really encourages women to wear their sexuality, and men too. The society now encourages men to embrace a sexuality that's not theirs, but women, like from like porn websites that make money from people uploading videos to all sorts of other Instagram's geared to highlight beauty, Facebook too, right? You're always competing with the best of like somebody's, you know, filters and things, right? So like beauty is sought after. Until you don't have it, you're conditioned in this world to flaunt it, and people who flaunt it best get paid a lot of money for it, right? And so I don't want to wish any ill will on people for living the life that the society is shaped, because we are shaped by our society to a degree. But we should have the ability to have realistic conversations about protecting our kids, as you say, and like the reality of the situation. Like if you want to dress up as a woman and go dance for men who are going to put $50 bills in your G-string, buddy, you can find people who want to do that for you. More power to, and you're cool with it. Hey man, awesome. But I'm not gonna go see you because like, no, that's not my thing. Like if there's chicks there, maybe I'll go to the other room while you're working. You know, like we'll see. But like you see what I'm saying? Like I don't have a problem with it, but don't ask me to participate and don't bring kids into it. Right? Maybe that's a long way of saying that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of what you said that I'd want to respond to there. I guess
Sorry.
like, you know, no. Like it's, I think that the sexualization of our society is definitely increasing, and I think it's mostly not a good thing. And I think that the left and the woke people are like, you know, they still have that hippie flavor, and they're like, yeah, it's a good thing, you know, embrace yourself, you know, let your freak flag fly, you know. And like we have something like OnlyFans, for example, where a young woman who's just 18 years old can casually prostitute herself just by having a cell phone and by scanning her ID. Like we aren't going to see the grave consequences of this. It's probably going to be a few years until we see how bad it is, but it's not good. It's not good. Yeah. You know, modesty being dead, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think that, like, you know, encouraging people to be, sex workers is a good thing. And this is a whole like woke.
Well,
thing,
and see, like,
it's so valid to be
gay is one
sex
thing.
Worker.
Yeah, being gay or being like, you know, gay or lesbian, whatever. That's one thing. Being a sex worker is another thing too, right? Like I think.
No, but it's totally related.
It's
totally related, and
well, but it's being normalized for straight. I see what you're saying.
Of course, but the tip of the spear is LGBTQ plus like acceptance and embrace, and like, you know, embracing the LGBTQ plus world, because it's like, you know, not only is LGBTQ plus about sex positivity, it's about, once again, you know, this is who I am. I am my sexuality.
Yeah, it does.
My sexuality is me.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
And like, and for your example of friends who are, you know, same sex or whatever, and they have a family, I'm sure they would recognize the difference between, like, you know, this is how I describe it. If you go on an application like Grindr, for example, where gay men meet gay men, like people will define themselves of like, hey, this is how these are my dimensions. This is how tall I am. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm a
not
bottom in the
36, 34,
bedroom,
36.
and like I
Not
like
those
do
dimensions.
yeah, I like doing this in the bedroom and blah 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 blah. And it's like this is how this person is defining themselves. They're defining themselves through a role, through being a whole in the bedroom. Quite frankly, it's kind of like
Yeah.
what you might think you're a
See, I don't.
proud.
I'm not.
Let me finish my point. Let me finish
Sorry. Go
my
ahead.
point. You
Yeah. Yeah.
might think
Sorry.
you're like a proud gay man or whatever, but it's like you are treating yourself like a piece of meat. Okay. And, if I were to talk to this person, I would say, like, hey, what's your name? What do you like doing? Oh, wow, you're Eric and you play soccer. Maybe those are the first two things that you should describe about yourself of who you are as a person,
I don't think that
as opposed to the fact that this is what I like to do in the bedroom and rah, rah, rah. Like this is a big difference between how you define yourself. Right. And I think it's very unhealthy when people do that of, yes, I'm a gay man and I'm a bottom and blah, blah, blah. Like I don't think that's healthy because that's not the most important thing about you by a large stretch.
Maybe not. But if the app,
maybe, what do you mean? Maybe not.
No. Like, well, I don't know much. I was going to say, I don't know much about
you having sex with your wife, for example. Do you think that's the most important thing about you, Mark?
No, but it depends on
like the fact that you're
feet,
the fact that you're into feet and you have a foot fetish, and I know you have a foot fetish, Mark.
Right.
Do you think that's the most important thing about you as a person, or maybe it's the fact that you own a channel called Canada Poly and you're passionate about Canadian politics and you love your children, for example? I think those are much more important, like identifiers for your identity. What would it depend on? What are you talking about?
Let me give you a scenario. Okay, say hypothetically that you're in a relationship and you download Tinder, right? You're in a straight relationship and you download Tinder and you do have a foot fetish, and the relationship that you had previously been in, like, just got out of, and you're like, thank God that's over, or thank goodness that's over. And you download Tinder and you're like, I need to scratch this itch and I don't want to.
I need feet pics now.
Like, holy smokes. So you create your profile, and your profile is foot guy, 2021. And then, so, right, you see what I'm saying? But whereas if I was going for a job interview and somebody said, what is the most important thing about you? I wouldn't be like, actually, could you take off your shoes? Like I wouldn't, right? It wouldn't be like that. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference. So Grindr, maybe that's appropriate. And maybe on LinkedIn, their thing is not, Brad bottom, right? Like, also does spreadsheets.
That's fair enough. But I would make the argument, and this might be controversial, I would make the argument that the people who primordially define themselves through the sexuality are not living healthy lives and aren't truly happy. They might be living very indulgent lifestyles, and they might think they're very happy because they're constantly having lots of sex, but I don't think that they're really truly living a fulfilling life. And let's loop this back to what we were saying before about, like, how did it get to this point of where we have like drag time story hour, like, being taught to children. I think it's because we have a society that's maybe a little bit emotionally immature or like naive to how complex and sensitive these issues really are. And I almost want to use like Christians as like an example of people who, if you're reading the book properly, you are very sensitive to this stuff. You are very sensitive to, like, the emotional reality that you have as a person in relationships. And I think generally, what's lacking is that, Bible thumpers, for example, they almost have even more respect for sex than the average, like, woke hippie would, because, an average, maybe not an average, but like a Christian who is like, hey, like, be careful of sex. Like, it's sinful. Like, it really is something that can mess with your loins. It can mess with your mind. It can mess with your heart. Like, it's very, very powerful stuff, to choose to have sex with somebody. This should not be taken lightly.
Shouldn't be taken lightly. That's right.
Shouldn't be taken lightly. And these days with the Tinder swiping, it's like, hey, oh, you're fucking other people too, right? Yeah. And we're all just kind of like sleeping around and everything. And our hearts are slowly decaying, and I think statistically becoming less likely to create strong pair bonds because we're messing around with so many people. So I guess maybe to answer your question, a lot of baby boomers that have allowed Drag Time Story Hour still hold on to this like hippie idea, this hippie flavor of like, hey man, like, let love and live and live and let live.
I've got to go because I got to get my kids. But there's so much to unpack there. In the late 1950s, early 1960s, divorce started getting promoted as something that was a solution. If you go back and listen to some 60s music, like divorce was a huge thing. Boyfriends were being like boyfriends, girlfriends, and like there was a movie won the Oscar of like 1961 or 62, The Apartment, Best Picture, and the whole premise was that an ad executive had an apartment in the city, and that's where he kept his mistress, right? Like so like there's been a long push to do exactly what you were talking about, to
undermine Christian morality as well.
Yeah, well, to push God out of the situation. And
Jack Lemmon, The Apartment.
There you go. See, right? Hey, bam, boom. So right, there's been a very long, and I mean, like you go from The Apartment and I can't even remember the one. A letter, Maria. Take a letter, Maria. Address it to my wife. Say it won't be coming. Okay, never mind. It was a whole.
No, I know that song. Yeah,
you know that song. So there was a whole thing, and then you go from that. Like he's like, oh, I'm going to start a new life with this other chick in this other town, and you go from that to WAP, right? And like in the 1960s, you couldn't see
just like that. Boom,
bam. You wake up one day and you're like, what happened? Who are these people? Why is this poured on my MTV? That's where we're at. So I don't know. I think that there's so much to unpack. Like I agree with you a lot of the broad strokes, but I mean, we could probably talk for another hour and we'd still be coming back to like, oh, what did you just say? And we'd be like, oh crap. So I have to go, and this has been fun. And where can they find you?
Have WAP just like that.
What? Say that again.
You start to casually permit adultery, and then all of a sudden you have WAP. Just
bam.
The next.
Bam.
That's it.
It's a slippery slope. Okay,
thanks for having me, Mark. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Greg Wycliffe, Instagram, Greg Wycliffe, TikTok, and Twitter at GDUB. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Always, man. It's great. And for me, you can find me at Canada Poly and all the other places that you usually find me. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.